That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, the fifth film directed by Gil Kenan, also technically the fifth Ghostbusters film in this universe, that is opening courtesy of Columbia Pictures on March 22nd, 2024.
Do I know another film from this director?
Well, I know you saw the not very good Poltergeist remake that he did with me several years ago. His debut was Monster House, also directed City of Ember. Notably was one of the co-writers of the last Ghostbusters film, Afterlife, in 2021.
What is this film about? When the discovery of an ancient artifact unleashes an evil force, Ghostbusters new and old must join forces to protect their home and save the world from a second ice age. What's your pull quote?
They still ain't afraid of no ghosts, and neither will you be in this energetic, often cute chapter in an ongoing franchise which still hasn't figured out how to pass its gauntlet on to the new crew.
Mine. As fun as it is nonsensical, there's enough charm to make this installment enjoyable. I did enjoy this more than the 2021 film.
I did too. Technically, you could make an argument that it's the best since the original 84 film, because Ghostbusters 2 is not very good.
No. I did think the story is just nonsense, but the cast, for the most part, is very charming.
Yeah.
Including some new additions like Kumail Nanjiani.
Yeah, who's kind of a scene stealer.
And Patton Oswalt. Mm-hmm. But the basic story is that the new Ghostbusters, so Paul Rudd, his girlfriend, what's her name?
Carrie Coon plays Callie.
And her two children.
Phoebe and Trevor, played by Mckenna Grace and Finn Wolfhard.
They have left Oklahoma and they are now in New York City, living in the old firehouse, courtesy of Ernie Hudson's character, who is a successful financier and philanthropist.
Winston Zeddemore.
Yeah. So they're in New York City busting ghosts when one day Ernie Hudson has created this lab for paranormal research. And one day they get a hold of, through Dan Aykroyd, this orb. And we find out the orb contains an evil spirit called Goraka. And of course, Goraka is released. And Goraka's goal is to take over Earth. And Goraka's method of dominion is to freeze everything. Hence the name Frozen Empire.
Much like the White Witch in Lion, the Witch in the Wardrobe.
So, of course, everything culminates in the Ghostbusters battling Goraka, and they are not successful. But thankfully, we have the side character Kumail Nanjiani, who we find out, the film opens in 1904, so 120 years ago, and we see that there was some spirit that, like, froze a room of people. But we see that that spirit was captured in a brass orb. And the person who captured it was called a fire master. And this fire master has passed down this responsibility from generation to generation. So Kumail's grandmother was the last fire master. But she died, they were estranged, so he didn't know any of this. So now that he has access to the orb, he doesn't know that he's supposed to protect it. So his dumbass sold it to Dan Aykroyd, who then gave it to Ernie Hudson's people. So when they're experimenting with it, they accidentally, several things have to happen for it to get open, but it gets open and Goraka's released. But Kumail, in the 11th hour, gets a whole, understands how to use his powers, and he uses his firepower to disable Goraka so that the Ghostbusters can trap it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also with the ingenuity of Mckenna Grace's Phoebe, who understands how brass is used.
Well, we can talk about that. So, yeah, I thought, I don't even know where to begin. Maybe with what I didn't like about the movie. I don't understand how the Ghostbusters are in a world where everyone knows there are ghosts and they are a threat. But then we have the mayor of New York City, played by
William Atherton,
who we know from
the first Ghostbusters, the villainous EPA representative.
He is like anti-Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Even though his ass has seen for 40 years that there are ghosts out here trying to hurt us, and all he wants to do is take down the Ghostbusters.
And he shut them down already, and it caused terrible things to happen.
In the last movie.
In 84.
Or in 84, I'm sorry. So I don't understand why, the Ghostbusters aren't receiving, Because I feel like if this were another movie, the plot would be like this story would be reversed, where like it's been discovered, and so globally we're putting all our efforts into stopping these ghosts. In this, and I guess that's in line with the original Ghostbusters. Although in the original Ghostbusters, it made sense that people were doubting them, like they seemed crazy.
They were new.
But in this one, they're not new. People know. We even have characters looking at YouTube videos from 1980, whatever, seeing the Ghostbusters take down the Stay Puft Man. So why aren't they getting more assistance? The public's mad that in the process of the Ghostbusters capturing a dangerous spirit, they tear up some bikes or cause some damage to a building.
It's not even that much damage, really.
No. Well, compared to this, like, entity.
This sewer dragon.
Yeah, that's huge. That drove me crazy.
I agree.
Okay, the other thing that didn't make sense to me is Kumail's character is supposed to be like a loser. And he kind of makes himself seem like a hustler. And in his grandmother's apartment, he discovered this back room, and that's where she kept the Fire Master's orb and the Fire Master's horns and all the brass.
Gracchus horns. But yeah.
The Gracchus horns and all the brass that's necessary to keep it at bay. So it looks like something special.
It looks very ornate.
Right. So even if you don't know anything about antiquities, you would think that this is probably worth something to someone. But what does Kumail do? He puts some of this shit in a box and then takes it to Dan Aykroyd and says, give me $40 and you can have. The orb itself is so ornate that you would think you could sell it on eBay for 100 times that amount. So I don't understand. That drove me crazy. Okay, there's another side character, Melody, the ghost. And there appears to be some little like lesbian relationship between Phoebe and the ghost.
Yes, certainly.
Well, certainly one-sided. Like Phoebe is sprung on this ghost. Okay, so Phoebe gets kicked out of the Ghostbusters because the mayor is like, I'm going to shut y'all down, and definitely you can't have this underage person working. So Paul Rudd and the mom tell her, sorry, you have to sit this out. So one night while they're out fighting ghosts, Phoebe packs up her chessboard and goes out to the park, like in the middle of the night, this teenage girl in like New York City. And she sets up her chess game, and all of a sudden a ghost starts playing with her. But the ghost is intrigued, it would seem, because this person's not afraid of her. But then we find out that Goraka put Melody up to it to convince her to open his orb. Okay, that didn't make any sense to me because when...
I don't understand how Goraka, while he's still in the orb, is communicating.
Number one. Number two, Melody tells Phoebe, oh, Goraka can't control the living. He can only control ghosts. But it's... So then Phoebe takes her ass to Ernie Hudson Center where they can separate ghosts from like objects. And this bitch separates her soul from her body for 2 minutes so that she can bond with Melody.
So they can...
Like ghost hump?
Swirl.
I don't understand what... Because they can...
So they can air glide?
Yeah, I don't understand what Phoebe thought she could do with the ghost that she can't already do. Because she can see her. The ghost can touch things. Okay. So while Phoebe is out of her body, Goraka controls her to do the chant that will open his orb. So what... If I don't understand why he couldn't just have Melody do the chant.
Well, that. Mm-hmm.
And then she's saying he can't control humans, he can only control ghosts. But then, there are so many ghosts available to him that who could say these words.
There are so many plot holes.
And how did the ghost or Melody know that Phoebe had access to separate her soul from her body?
Well, and that she would do that.
and that she would.
It's her own suggestion to do it. It's not Melody's.
That's right.
I needed Melody to be this manipulative little femme fatale that's like, hey, if you really want to touch me.
That would have been so fun. That Melody is obviously manipulating
like
Phoebe.
Sigourney Weaver, who's not included in this one, as the keymaster, something seductive.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, is Melody, I couldn't quite get a sense. She makes it seem like she's from old-timey time, but then she looks very modern, and she speaks very modern. So I was...
She seems like she burned down her family last week.
Right. But then she intimates that it's been a very long time that she's been a ghost.
And she really wants to see them again. It's like, do they want to see you?
So that's so Garaka has convinced Melody to double cross Phoebe, promising her that she can move on to the afterlife so she can see her family. But yeah, you killed your family. Do they want to see you? I don't know.
Yeah, on closer examination, sussing out all these details, the dramatic catalysts don't really make sense.
Something else about the story, you already kind of mentioned it. At the 11th hour, when Garaka has literally come up from out of the ocean, it would seem, and I don't know if Garaka's male, but Garaka's freezing all of New York City, it's actively happening, and is approaching the fire station. Phoebe has the bright idea to smelt brass. We see her take pieces of brass, put it in a pot, and melt it down, and then
dip the innards of her proton pack.
Didn't that seem ridiculous?
Well, it takes a long time to smelt things.
That just seems so crazy to me.
Yes.
Okay, but getting to things I liked. Dan Aykroyd's character has a YouTube show, which is kind of a mix of Antiques Roadshow and a Gallagher stand-up performance, because all these people come to him and bring him memorabilia they believe is haunted, and he does a reading on it. But if there's no paranormal activity on the object, then his little assistant podcast, who we know from the 2021 film, he will take a big ass hammer and smash it. I thought that was really funny. So what I didn't like about the 2021 film as much was I thought the story from the last one was kind of boring, but the kids were kind of annoying to me. So this film, it benefits from the kids being older, but I found podcast to be quite funny in his interactions with Dan Aykroyd.
I agree. I think he was actually pretty sweet and cute in this as well.
And Podcast and Dan Aykroyd make their way to Patton Oswalt, who's this librarian. And it's Patton Oswalt who explains everything about Garaka. And there's actually a really cool sequence where we're getting a reenactment of how Garaka came to be contained in the orb. But it looks like it's on a concrete, like someone's etched it into stone. I thought that was really fun. But yeah, maybe Patton Oswalt was my favorite part.
Or Kumail. I also thought Carrie Coon was kind of funny. And I like her chemistry with Paul Rudd.
And of course, Paul Rudd's always cute.
I think Finn Wolfhard really takes a seat, goes to the back burner on this, because he's only really dealing with Slimer in the attic.
Yeah, Slimer's in the attic, and so he's trying to figure that out. And he keeps saying that he's 18, he's an adult. I liked him in this, but yeah, he didn't have much to do. There's a scene where, oh God, the mayor / EPA guy is so annoying, because at one point at the library where Patton Oswalt is, so it's Dan Aykroyd, Podcast, and Phoebe are there. There's this little spirit that escapes, and it's able to make inanimate objects come to life. So there's one of those huge Mutual of Omaha lions in front of the library, and it comes to life. So Phoebe has to destroy it with her proton pack. And the mayor shows up and basically she gets arrested for destroying this lion. But didn't everyone see this huge ass lion come to life? Again, I don't understand why everyone's acting like all of this is just only the Ghostbusters can see what's happening.
Yeah, I agree.
That drove me crazy. Lastly, Melody's match that she carries around, because Phoebe explains to her that all spirits or ghosts keep something that reminds them, something like an emotional whatever.
Keeps them grounded.
Something like that. So Melody's carrying around the matchbook that she accidentally burned or killed her family with. So at the 11th hour, when Kumail's trying to stop Garaka, he doesn't have access to fire, because the lighter he was using ran out of fluid because he was playing with it too much. So it's Melody who lights her match, and that's how Kumail's able to use it. But that final fight scene felt so it happened so fast.
It feels very inconsequential, yeah.
Yes. So,
but if you think back to the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, that's kind of the same thing.
Sure. Although I thought Garaka looked really cool. But the Stay Puft thing, it felt more, I don't know, maybe because it it just feels more fantastic. I feel like because the 84 film is so ridiculous and the Ghostbusters are so much more, I think, comical in nature.
Yeah.
Like those original four, that it all lended itself to something that made more sense to me. And then who's the little guy who likes Sigourney?
Rick Moranis.
Yeah, I feel like all of those actors really lent themselves, or like they were appropriate for this ridiculous story.
Well, that's why it's like the kids are all kind of earnest. That's why we still can't divorce ourselves from the old Ghostbusters
Right.
crew, because they're still more entertaining.
But speaking of the old crew, Annie Potts is back, and Bill Murray just pops up.
He has like 2 scenes.
Yeah,
But
so all of them get into Ghostbusters uniforms, so everyone's trying to fight Garaka at the end.
no Sigourney.
No.
But that's fine, because I didn't even really love her cameo in Ghostbusters Afterlife.
It
so
felt
it felt like an afterthought. So
Speaking of the post-credit scene in this film, I thought it was pointless. All we see is the little Stay Puft.
the mini Stay Puft.
They were in the previous film, I remember. Yeah, the post-credit scene is just the little marshmallow guys steal a truck from a gas station. That's it.
And Trevor's little love interest, played by Celeste O'Connor, she has nothing to do. He doesn't even know she's in New York.
I thought that was weird too. Like, how does she? Because he says, "Oh, you told me you were going to be an intern, but I didn't know." It's like, what are the odds? It's also, what are the odds that Kumail? I don't know. The fact that Kumail's character sells the orb to Dan Aykroyd, like, it all just feels so.
It's very flimsy. As is another new character we forgot to mention named Lars.
Oh, I totally forgot about him.
Yeah.
He's like the main person. Well,
He's one of Winston's guys.
yeah, Ernie Hudson's lab, it felt very like
Makeshift.
makeshift and not very secure.
Yeah.
Because even the girl who's like the intern, she's like doing experiments by herself at night. She's part of the reason why one of the ghosts escapes. Like, this doesn't feel very official.
No, but again, I think they have a lot of flexibility because the franchise itself is always built on zaniness and ridiculousness. Sure. And it again, out of the several that have come since the original, this kind of captures the spirit the best. But yeah, upon closer example, but much like the first Ghostbusters, that's not a perfect film. And if you look at it, especially in the context with which it's made, there are a lot of things to pick apart in that as well. I like that this one had the gall to open with a Robert Frost poem and then just be utterly ridiculous. And then there was a nice shout out to Ivan Reitman, who passed away in 2022. Do you remember the scene where Paul Rudd has like an old VHS of a film called Cannibal Girls?
Oh, yes.
That was Ivan Reitman's sophomore film, which starred Eugene Levy.
But I did enjoy this movie well enough. What would you give Ghostbusters Frozen Empire?
Out of all the ones since the first one, this one is utterly. You're able to rewatch this one again quite easily. I'd give it a 3.
I would give it 3 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.